The Supreme Court of the United States just delivered a 9-0 decision. Every justice agreed. And what they ruled could allow police to step into your home without a warrant and potentially see every firearm you own. But here is the twist. That very same court also handed gun owners one of the most significant victories in modern history. 2 unanimous rulings, 2 completely different impacts, and most gun owners have no idea either of them even happened. Quick question before we go any further. Are you subscribed to this channel? Because what I am about to break down today could be the most important legal update you hear all year. I am not exaggerating. If you own firearms and you are unaware of these 2 rulings, you are operating in the dark. Hit that subscribe button right now. We cover these legal updates every single week, and missing even one could affect your freedom, your firearms, and your future. All right, let's get into it. Here's what just happened. Over the past several months, the Supreme Court of the United States has issued 2 separate, unanimous decisions. That means all 9 justices agreed, every single one. These were not split decisions. These were not 5-4 rulings. Both were 9-0. One decision deals with your Fourth Amendment rights, your protection against warrantless searches of your home. The other involves your Second Amendment rights, your right to keep and bear arms. Together, these 2 rulings are reshaping what it means to be a gun owner in America right now. Let's start with the ruling that should immediately grab every gun owner's attention. It is called Case versus Montana. The Supreme Court released this decision on January 14, 2026, and it was unanimous. Here is the basic situation. A man in Montana appeared to be experiencing a mental health crisis. A neighbor called 911. Police arrived at his home. They did not have a warrant, but they entered anyway. Officers stated they believed someone inside required immediate assistance. Later, the man inside was charged with a crime, and evidence discovered inside the home was used against him. That raised a major constitutional question for the court. Can police enter a private home without a warrant during an emergency? And if they can, what exactly qualifies as an emergency? The court answered yes, but with a defined legal standard. The standard they adopted is called objectively reasonable. This means officers may enter without a warrant if a reasonable person in the same situation would believe someone inside needed immediate help. Here is why that matters so much if you are a gun owner. Think about this scenario for a moment. You are at home. Maybe you had a stressful day. Maybe you are not answering your phone. A neighbor becomes concerned and calls 911. Police arrive. Under this new ruling, they may now have legal authority to enter your home without knocking and without a warrant. If officers step inside and observe firearms, ammunition, or your gun safe, all of that can potentially be documented and later used. That is the real-world impact of this decision. Here is something many people misunderstand about the Fourth Amendment. Most assume it completely prevents police from entering their homes without permission. In general, that is true. Your home is the most protected space under constitutional law. But the Supreme Court has always recognized certain exceptions. One of those is called the emergency aid exception. Before this ruling, courts across the country applied different legal standards to determine when that exception applied. Some courts required probable cause, a higher threshold requiring clear facts or strong evidence before police could act. This decision replaced that patchwork of standards with one nationwide rule. The new standard is objectively reasonable. That is a lower threshold. It is easier for officers to meet, and that is the part currently raising concern among constitutional attorneys and gun rights advocates. Critics of the ruling, including legal analysts at the Cato Institute, say the court declined to require the traditional probable cause standard. That shift could make it easier for police to enter private homes without warrants compared to previous interpretations. Now, here is where this becomes directly connected to your Second Amendment rights. If this breakdown is helping you understand what is happening, imagine what is coming next. My next video explains the exact phrases you should say and should never say during a traffic stop if you have a firearm in your vehicle. Those 5 words could be the difference between going home that night or spending the night in a jail cell. Subscribe right now so you do not miss it. It could be the most important 6 minutes of your life as a gun owner. All right, now let's move to the second ruling. And this one is actually positive news, very positive news. This case is Smith Wesson Brands Inc. v. Estados Unidos Mexicanos. The Supreme Court issued this decision on June 5, 2025. Once again, the vote was unanimous, 9-0. Here is the background. The government of Mexico filed a lawsuit against American firearm manufacturers, including Smith Wesson, Glock, Colts Manufacturing Company, and others. Mexico argued that these companies knowingly allowed firearms to be trafficked to criminal cartels. They claimed U.S. gun manufacturers were responsible for violence occurring within their country and sought billions of dollars in damages. Now, a quick legal note. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. Always consult a licensed attorney for guidance specific to your situation. Back to the case. There's a federal law in the United States called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, often referred to as the Policy. This law was created specifically to protect firearm manufacturers from lawsuits over crimes committed by individuals who misuse their products. Think of it like this. If someone drives drunk and causes an accident, you cannot sue the car manufacturer for building the vehicle. The Plico Ese applies the same principle to firearms. Mexico attempted to argue that these companies were not simply lawful sellers. They claimed the manufacturers were aware of trafficking patterns and were effectively enabling illegal distribution across the border. The First Circuit Court of Appeals allowed the lawsuit to move forward, which created serious concern across the American firearms industry. But then, the case reached the Supreme Court, and all 9 justices dismissed it. Here is the part that very few people are discussing. In this ruling, the court made a statement that directly reinforces Second Amendment protections. All 9 justices acknowledged that the firearms produced by these companies are widely legal and purchased by ordinary Americans across the country. That includes AR-15 style rifles. Toyo's 15 style rifle. That includes semi-automatic firearms commonly owned for lawful purposes. The entire court, including justices often viewed as ideologically different, agreed on that point. That is significant. It creates a strong constitutional reference point for future Second Amendment cases in America. Now think about what could have happened if Mexico had won this lawsuit. Here is a simple hypothetical example. Imagine a foreign government successfully suing every major American gun manufacturer. Companies facing billions of dollars in damages and legal costs might be forced to shut down operations or drastically change how they sell their products. Firearms commonly used for home defense or lawful personal protection could become harder to find or dramatically more expensive. That was the real legal risk, and the court stopped it. But there is something even more important to understand when these 2 rulings are examined together. They send a message that is both reassuring and concerning at the same time. Quick pause for a moment. Right now, a large percentage of viewers watching this content are not subscribed. That means many people are missing critical legal updates exactly like this one. Join the community that stays informed and prepared. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next major legal breakdown. Now, let's connect both rulings and look at the bigger picture. On one side, the court is reinforcing your ability to legally purchase and own firearms. By blocking foreign legal challenges against firearm manufacturers, the ruling helps maintain stability in the firearms marketplace. That is a major win for the Second Amendment. On the other side, the same court made it easier for law enforcement to enter homes without a warrant under certain emergency circumstances. That directly affects Fourth Amendment protections. Here is what that looks like in practical terms. You could be a completely law-abiding gun owner, every firearm properly purchased, every permit valid, every storage rule followed, and yet, under the new Case versus Montana standard, a single wellness call from a concerned neighbor could potentially create a legal pathway for police to enter your home without a warrant. If firearms are visible when officers enter, situations can become legally complicated very quickly. Here is one of the biggest misconceptions among gun owners. Many assume that if they are following the law, they have nothing to worry about. But constitutional rights are not only about guilt or innocence, they are about procedure. They define what law enforcement is allowed to do before any accusation or charge is made. When the legal threshold for entering a home becomes lower, even lawful gun owners face greater exposure than before. That is not a political interpretation. That is simply how the legal standard now operates. So here is what you need to understand moving forward. First, learn what the emergency aid exception actually means. If a situation appears to be an emergency from the outside, a wellness check, loud disturbance, or domestic complaint, officers may have expanded authority to enter a residence. Second, be aware of how firearms are stored inside your home. If officers enter under an emergency exception and firearms are in plain view, that can create legal complications you want to avoid. Secure storage matters more than ever. Third, do not argue with officers at the door. Your constitutional rights are real, but the front porch is not where legal battles are resolved. Courts, not doorways, are where those arguments belong. Stay calm. Know your rights. Document everything. Contact your attorney immediately if needed. This area of law is evolving quickly, and more cases are already moving through lower courts right now. Some could expand what qualifies as an emergency. Others may attempt to restore stronger protections. The legal landscape is shifting in real time. And if you are not paying attention, you could miss the developments that matter most. Subscribe right now because this legal conversation is far from over. In my next video, I will break down exactly what gun owners should prepare before the next major court decision arrives. The legal window to act may be shorter than you think. Here is the bottom line. The Supreme Court has issued 2 unanimous rulings that every gun owner in America should understand. One decision strengthens the ability for Americans to continue purchasing and owning firearms by protecting manufacturers from large-scale foreign lawsuits. The other makes it easier for law enforcement to enter homes without a warrant under an expanded emergency standard. Taken together, these rulings create a legal reality that is both protective and challenging at the same time. Your Second Amendment rights are being reinforced in the marketplace, while your Fourth Amendment protections inside your home are facing new legal pressure. That is the environment gun owners are operating in right now. Let's make this practical. You could legally own every firearm in your home. You could have proper permits, secure storage, and full compliance with state law. But under the Case versus Montana standard, a single concerned call from a neighbor could potentially allow officers to enter your home without a warrant if they believe an emergency exists. If firearms are visible when they enter, the situation can escalate in ways that are difficult to predict or control. Here is another important point many gun owners overlook. Being law-abiding does not eliminate legal risk. Constitutional protections are not only about whether someone is guilty or innocent. They are about the process that must be followed before any conclusion is reached. When the legal threshold for home entry becomes easier to satisfy, even responsible gun owners must be more aware of how these rules apply in real-world situations. That is simply how the legal framework now works. So here are the key takeaways going forward. First, understand how the emergency aid exception functions. Any situation that appears to be urgent from an outside perspective, such as a wellness check, loud disturbance, or domestic complaint, may allow officers to act without a warrant. Second, pay attention to firearm storage inside your home. If officers enter under an emergency exception and firearms are in plain sight, legal complications can arise quickly. Secure storage is more important than ever. Third, avoid arguing with officers at the door. Your rights matter, but the doorway is not where legal disputes are settled. Those discussions happen in court. Stay calm. Know your rights. Document everything. Contact a qualified attorney if necessary. Legal developments in this area are moving quickly. This ruling establishes a precedent that future cases will build upon. Some cases may expand what qualifies as an emergency. Others may attempt to restore stronger constitutional protections. The legal landscape is continuing to evolve in real time. If you are not paying attention, it becomes easy to miss the updates that matter most. Subscribe now because this legal conversation is not finished. In my next video, I will break down exactly what gun owners should prepare before the next major court ruling arrives. The legal window to prepare may be shorter than you think. Here is the final takeaway. 2 unanimous rulings. 2 major constitutional impacts. One decision protects the structure of the American firearms industry and reinforces lawful ownership. The other lowers the legal threshold for warrantless home entry in emergency situations. Together, they reshape how gun owners must think about both the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment moving forward. One last important note before we close. Everything discussed in this video is for educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. Laws and interpretations vary by state and by situation. Always consult a qualified firearms attorney for guidance specific to your circumstances. If this video helped you better understand your rights today, share it with at least one gun owner who needs this information. Then hit the subscribe button, because staying informed is not optional. It is how you stay prepared.